Hello and welcome to the DVD Graveyard. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at Street Trash from 1987, and this film was directed by J. Michael Moreau. Now, this is a movie that I was watching a couple days ago or a couple nights ago, whenever, and I was like, I really need to talk about this movie because I love this movie. I'm going to start off by saying that. This is a movie that I really like, but then, the more I'm watching it, I'm like, do I really want to talk about this movie? And it's not because of the content therein. It's just because it's kind of hard to talk about. If you look up really kind of the plot synopsis, or if you hear anybody kind of talk about this movie, you're going to get that it is liquor that these homeless people drink that makes them melt. And that does happen. We do get that. But kind of in between all of that, there is a lot of other shit going on. There's a love story that's happening in this movie. There's like a criminal murder investigation that's happening in this. There's like a slight mob type story that's going on in this. There's a lot of stuff that's happening in this. So if I struggle to kind of talk about this, and if I'm kind of all over the place or whatever, I'm going to try to break it down the best way I can. Now, I'm not going to delve too deeply into this. I'm just going to kind of go over some of the brief stuff. And I will say, if you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend checking this out, because this is it's not going to be for everybody. This is not going to be something that everybody loves or even likes, for that matter. But if you're into this movie feels how I always describe this movie is this is the most trauma feeling non-trauma film that I've ever seen. And if you don't know what Troma is, Troma is the releasing company who does films like the Toxic Avenger, the original Toxic Avenger, and then of course like Class of Nuke 'Em High, stuff like that. Really kind of gross, sort of dark comedy type films. And this movie absolutely, again, if you look it up, it's going to show that it's a horror comedy. And it kind of is a comedy. It's a very, very dark comedy. There is but if you're into dark comedy and the darkest of dark comedy, this movie's pretty funny. It makes me laugh. It's a really good one to kind of. I love throwing this movie on. I don't really want to say that it's a comfort movie for me, but it's one that I always find myself putting on, like when I'm doing stuff around the house, like if I'm doing dishes or cleaning the living room or editing a video, or something like that. It's one that I always find myself putting on, and I always really just kind of will get in the mood to watch it at random times. Like I think the other day, that's kind of what made me want to talk about it. Was the first time in a while that I've actually just sat down to watch this film just seriously and pay attention to it and kind of get into it, I guess you could say. So before I go over the plot, because to be honest with you, there's not a lot of a plot. There's a lot of stuff going on in this movie, but it's kind of a sort of a loose, kind of hard plot. It's not a straightforward plot line. I'm going to read the back of this DVD that I have. This is the Synapse Films DVD release. This is the the special 2-disc Meltdown edition, which if you get the chance, this was released in like 2006. But it's a really kick-ass DVD release. This is one of those standout covers that I remember always seeing all the time and just being like, what the hell is this? What is this film? And I actually didn't pick this DVD copy up until like just a few years ago. I finally got a copy of it, and I'm so this version of it anyway, the Meltdown edition. And if you get the chance, I highly recommend getting this one. It's also on Blu-ray, but the reason I say that is because this comes with a really, really good documentary on it. It's like a 2-hour documentary called The Meltdown Memoirs, which really goes all into really the making of this film, a lot of the stuff kind of surrounding this movie. Very good documentary. Highly recommended if you got the extra 2 hours to spare or whatever. Like I said, I think it's on the Blu-ray too. But if you just want to pick up the DVD, this is probably one of my favorite DVD releases, and definitely one of my favorite DVD cover arts. I love that cover with the blue and the yellow and the kind of street trash logo kind of thrown on there. It's got that iconic scene with the guy melting in the toilet, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. But anyway, I'm going to read the plot synopsis. In the sleazy, foreboding world of winos, derelicts, and drifters in lower Manhattan, two young runaways, 18-year-old Fred, played by Mike Lackey, and his younger brother, Kevin, played by Mark Ferrazza, however you say that, I'm sorry, I've butchered that into pieces, live in a tire hut in the back of a vast auto wrecking yard. The most lethal threat to the boys is the case of Tenafly Viper in Ed's liquor store window. Ed found the cheapo wine behind the wall in his basement. The stuff's 40 years old, and it's gone real bad. Anyone who drinks it melts within seconds, and it's only $1 a bottle. The other kind of paragraph on this just kind of talks a little bit about this kind of particular release. So this movie has a really big cast in it. So I'm going to talk about pretty much just kind of our main people. So Mike Lackey, like I said, plays Fred. He is sort of our main character, kind of. Him and his brother Kevin, they're sort of kind of the main character, which I like that we have a really big, you don't really know who the main character is. We kind of follow a lot of different people in this movie. But it's mainly, I think, Mike Lackey, I guess I would say, because he's very kind of central to the plot. He kind of what kind of kicks the plot in motion in a way. So, and Mike Lackey actually did a lot of the effects for this movie too, which are done fantastic. And I actually like him. He's kind of a piece of shit in this movie. I mean, everybody in this movie is kind of a piece of shit in one way or the other, except for like Kevin. Kevin's like the one kind of good person in this whole movie, to be honest with you. So anyway, Mike Lackey, of course, Bill Sheppel, I think is how you say his name. He plays Bill the policeman, or Bill the cop, or whatever he's credited as. He's kind of a big jacked kind of buff police guy who is investigating this murder plot that's going on in the background. We get Vic Noto, who plays Bronson. He's kind of the big bad guy who sort of runs the junkyard in a way. Or he doesn't run the junkyard, but he kind of runs this homeless person empire that's in this junkyard. He's kind of got this trash throne, and he's got his little concubine woman there with him, this really gross woman who's a fantastic actress, by the way. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. And of course, James Lorenz is in this movie. He plays the doorman. He's probably one of my favorite characters in this movie. He's the funniest character in this. And Tony Darrow is in this movie. He plays Nick Duran. He's kind of like a mob boss type that's in this movie, who kind of becomes central to the plot in a way. But like I said, the plot is just kind of all over the place. I'm going to try to sum it up the best I can. So basically, what happens is we are at this liquor store, and the guy who runs the liquor store, named Ed, he opens this wall in his liquor store in the basement, and he finds this case of really old liquor, and it's called Tenafly Viper, and he basically puts it out on the counter, and he starts, he's like, I could make a couple dollars off this, and he starts selling it for $1 a bottle, and so the homeless people kind of come there. The first one who kind of comes to see it is Mike Lackey's character Freddie, who kind of loses his bottle of liquor in this kind of opening chase sequence where he's like steals this money and he steals this liquor from this other place, and anyway he buys a bottle of this, or he steals a bottle of it, I should say, and he runs into this other homeless guy who then steals it from him. So Mike Lackey, the liquor has now been stolen from him, and that leads us to the first of a few melting sequences in this movie. So, and it's actually probably my favorite scene in the entire movie, and it's probably the best melting sequence in this movie, in my personal opinion. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I'll kind of briefly discuss the melting, because that is a big part of this movie. So basically, this guy who steals this liquor from Mike Lackey, he goes into this old kind of broke down building, and it's this really cool looking set that they've created, or it might be an actual destroyed building. I'm not sure. It looks great, whatever they've got going on. And he sits down on this toilet, and he cracks this bottle of Tenafly Viper, and takes a big swig out of it, and he begins to fucking melt into the toilet. Now, when I say he melts, whenever you hear melting, you think, they don't just melt into a puddle of gore. They melt in this such a creative and really cool way where they all, like, everyone that melts in this movie melts into a different color. So like this guy, for example, they all have their own color palette. This guy melts into this pretty, like, really cool looking blue color with some greens in there and everything else. And it's so disgusting and gross, but so cool and so pretty to look at. Like, I don't know. I just love all the colors in this movie. And that's one thing I can't get enough of in this. And like I said, this is my favorite scene. I'm very partial to blues and greens, so I think that's why I like this one. But the dude literally just melts down. I mean, he starts melting out of his pants leg and his face, and his hands start to melt. The skin starts to melt off of his hands, and he basically melts down into the toilet until there's nothing left. And of course, that's where we get the iconic shot from the cover of this, which is, again, if I didn't say this already, this is one of my favorite DVD cover arts of all time. But he melts down into the toilet with one of his hands holding on to the toilet plunger. And of course his arm breaks off, and it's so cool. Like, I mean, this whole sequence is badass. Such a cool thing. And I love the concept that they all melt down into different colors. Like I said, this guy melts down into this blue and green palette. There's another guy who melts down and he's all bright yellow. Another guy melts and he's all purple and stuff. One of the guys explodes. I mean, it's wild. Like, I love all the melting sequences. It's done so well, and each one of them are different. Everybody melts in a different way, and again has their own color palette, which I think is such a fun idea. So cool. Such a creative, decision to make in this movie, and that's one thing I really like about it. Now, again, getting into this movie. When you hear about this movie, or if you read the plot synopsis or whatever, you're going to think, oh, how are they going to kind of sustain the movie with just people melt, or this whole movie is going to be about people melting, or whatever have you. Honestly, this movie, the way that I describe it is, it starts off with people melting and it ends with people melting, but in the middle, it really slows down, and there's just a lot of homeless people drama, basically, is what's going on. I'll put it like this. This film, the elevator pitch for this movie is every once in a while, okay, it's a day in the life of some homeless people, and every once in a while, one of them drinks this liquor and melts. That's really kind of what this movie boils down to be honest with you, no pun intended. But, during this whole kind of middle section, like I said, we're kind of following Freddie and Kevin, and just their kind of shenanigans. And then, of course, Bill, the policeman, who is kind of investigating this murder, which is, Mr. Duran's wife, who ends up being taken back to this junkyard by Freddie, and of course she's taken away in this really, I hate to say really cool scene, because it's really kind of horrible what happens to this woman, but she gets taken away, and then of course she's killed, and then it turns into this big kind of investigation where they're trying to figure out who did it, and all this other stuff. I mean, there's a scene where I'm not gonna ruin this because it's so fucking funny, but there's this the dick scene in this movie where this guy gets his dick chopped off and they throw it all around the the junkyard. It's so funny and just so wild. Like, I mean, by the time you get to that point in this movie, you're like, what in the fuck is going on here? Like, this movie is so crazy. But it's a good time, nonetheless. I have a good time with it. Like I said, I love it. And so, again, as we kind of come down to it, Freddie finally ends up getting another bottle of Tenafly Viper, and he goes to drink it, but he's stopped. He's a little slow to drinking it because another homeless man drinks it before him, and he sees that this guy melts, and he freaks out, and he's going to tell, everybody, not to, he's going to tell Ed, the guy who sold this to them, not to sell any more of this because it's killing people. And then, of course, when he goes and does that, of course, Ed drinks a bottle of it, and he starts to melt, and it's just this crazy kind of shit show towards the end. And another thing, I touched on Bronson's character earlier. He kind of has, his kind of finale is in this too, because while all of this is going on, Bronson is basically in love with this girl Wendy, who works at the junkyard, who she is in love with Kevin. She has a crush on Kevin, Freddy's brother. And Bronson doesn't like that. He wants to be with Wendy, and he's like obsessed with her. And so he ends up like attacking Kevin, and chasing him around this junkyard because he's with Wendy, and Wendy was fucking around with him, and he just can't stand that. And then of course, it ends in this big kind of sort of fight between Freddy, Kevin, and Bronson at the end of this movie. And Bronson is ultimately dispatched in a really, really crazy and interesting way that I did not see coming, with this kind of air tank that blows his head apart. It's a really just crazy. I mean, by this time in the movie, you're just like, what the hell else is going to happen? And then, of course, the true ending to this film is we get Nick Duran, his character, with James Lorenz's character, the doorman, who he's angry with the doorman because he's talked a lot of shit about Mr. Duran in front of his face, and it's kind of his fault that that his girlfriend or wife or whoever was taken, away by these homeless people. So he really blames him for it. He ends up, I guess he's going to like torture him. And just so happens that James Lorenz has a bottle of Tenafly Viper in his pocket, and Mr. Duran drinks it right before he's going to like beat the shit out of James Lorenz, and he melts. Now we don't see it. That's kind of the unfortunate part of this, is we don't see the melting happen. And there actually was an alternate ending to this movie. So I'll talk about that in just a second, but that's just one thing that I'm really kind of bummed me out, is I really wanted to see that final melting sequence, or at least wanted one more. And I don't know if that's just to attribute it that I mean, I think we get like 5 melting sequences in this movie, but I just, you want more. You want more melting in this movie. That's what you're just hoping for. You want to see these people melt. It's fantastic. It's such a cool effect. But we don't get to see it, sadly. It's just, it's all kind of, James Lorenz's character is watching it happen. He's just kind of commenting on it, which is so fucking funny to hear his kind of dialogue going on while Mr. Duran is melting down. Now, like I said, there was an alternate ending to this where another character from this movie, I think his name was Bert, if I'm not mistaken. He's this guy that kind of hangs out with Mike Lackey's character a lot in the movie. Him and a group of his buddies, they end up finding the case of Tenafly Viper from the liquor store, and right before they're about to, right as they all drink it, it kind of fades to black. And I think that would have been a really cool, really, really cool way to end this movie, or at least, again, give us another kind of meltdown sequence. That would have been super, super cool. But anyway, that is Street Trash from 1987. I'm sorry if this review was kind of all over the place. Like I said, this movie is kind of all over the place. There's really, it's hard to kind of narrow down sort of what the plot is all about and what is going on in this movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. If you get the chance, definitely pick up this DVD, if you're a physical media person. It's streaming a couple places. I don't know. I don't think it's on Tubi. I'll say most of the stuff I talk about is on Tubi, but I think it's on Fandango, Plex, Amazon Prime Video. It looks like it's free on there, and Philo, which I don't, I've never used that, so I don't know what that is necessarily. I'm, kind of an old man. Again, I buy all my stuff, so I have it forever. Now, before I end this too, I did want to say that there is a remake of this movie. Now, the remake came out in 2024, which it kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't even know that they were doing a remake of this movie. And I actually thought it was really odd that they were doing a remake of this movie. It just kind of, again, it just popped up. One day I remember seeing that there was a remake of Street Trash, and I was like, what an odd movie to remake. I don't know. And I don't know if it's a remake or kind of like a spiritual sequel in a way, because I guess you could look at it like that. Because this movie never really did get a sequel at all. But I think in this one, in the remake, it's drugs instead of alcohol that are causing the people to melt. And I know that the plot is very, very different from what I'm understanding. It's similar premise, along the same lines. It's kind of a melt movie, I guess you could say. But again, I haven't seen it. I need to check it out. I want to see it. I've heard good things about it, but I haven't had the chance to watch it. But either way, to be honest with you, I don't think I'm going to prefer it over the original Street Trash. This movie is one of my favorite. Just kind of, I don't want to say it's not really one of my favorite films of all time, but it's one of my. And I don't really want to say it's a comfort movie for me either, but it's a movie that I find myself going back to quite often. There's just a vibe about this movie that I really enjoy. And like I said, it's one I love to throw on and just kind of have on in the background. And if you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. Now, it's not going to be for everybody. Not everybody is going to like this movie. I could see a lot of people saying that this movie is boring, or that there's not really a lot going on in this movie. I could absolutely see somebody saying that. But for me, I think it's a fun time. I have a great time with it. I would recommend it to somebody who does like trauma type stuff. It's definitely along those lines. So anyway, I'll stop rambling now. Stay tuned for the next episode of the DVD Graveyard. As always, I hope you enjoyed the review. Have a great night and goodbye.